Next up, PowerPoint 13C. Now, you might recall that in an earlier part of this chapter, I said that not all tropical storms become hurricanes, and you have to have maximum sustained winds greater than 74 miles an hour for a tropical cyclone adjacent to the Americas to reach hurricane status. Well, there was a tropical storm by the name of Allison. Allison never was a hurricane, but she lived a long life from the 5th to the 18th of June inclusive in 2001. She never got to hurricane strength, but came ashore near Galveston and meandered through the southern U.S. for nearly a week before reaching southern New England during its second week. And it finally moved offshore into the Atlantic off the coast of New England on the 18th of June. 43 deaths were caused by Allison, with extensive flooding in its path. I'm really sorry for this graphic in there. For some reason, those don't want to go away. A visible satellite image of Allison northeast of Houston, Texas on June 6, 2001. And there you see a radar image of the remnants of Allison on June 11, 2001. And it's right there near the what appears to be the Mississippi-Alabama border. So even though Allison never became a hurricane, she caused an awful lot of destruction and damage. Here are some notable hurricanes in U.S. history. Camille, 1969 in August. This is a momentous time in American history. At the same time that basically Jimi Hendrix was taking the stage at Woodstock, Hurricane Camille hit the Mississippi coast. One of the most intense hurricanes to reach the U.S. during the 20th century. It was a Category 5 storm. Only 3 Category 5 storms have ever hit the U.S., by the way. And Katrina was a Category 5 offshore, but when she hit, she was a high-end Category 3. In Camille, 200 plus lives were lost, $1.5 billion in property damage, which is small potatoes to money today, a 23-foot storm surge, and 184 mile an hour winds with a central pressure as low as 909 millibars. Now, please pay close attention to the screen because the following pictures you will not see in your textbook. These are before and after photos of an apartment complex, a 3-story apartment complex along the beach at a town called Pass Christian, Mississippi. This is from Lukens and Tarbuck, 9th edition of a book called The Atmosphere, which is a textbook I sometimes use in my lower division weather classes. So here's the before picture of this 3-story apartment complex at Pass Christian, Mississippi. This is before Camille, and this is after Camille. The legend has it that there were some people that did not evacuate. They had a hurricane party, and unfortunately, not listening to the evacuation warnings cost them their lives. Most unfortunate. Then there's Hurricane Hugo, which slammed right into Charleston, South Carolina on the first day of fall in 1989 with 138 mile an hour winds, $7 billion in damage, 21 deaths in the United States. If you want to really get an idea of what it's like to be part of a hurricane hunter crew, aside from that short video and the Katrina video you saw back in the beginning of the semester, read the focus box on the experience of a hurricane hunter flight crew on page 384 to 385. This image shows Hurricane Hugo directly overhead Charleston, South Carolina at 12 a.m. on September 22nd, 1989. Then there was Andrew and Ivan. First, we'll talk about Andrew. August 1992, Miami, Florida. Andrew was a Category 5, 155 mile an hour winds, 50,000 homes destroyed in the greater Miami area. Stronger winds may have occurred in small tornadoes that touched down as the northeastern quadrant of the storm came ashore. There were 53 deaths in Andrew, 41 of those were in Florida. Then there was Ivan, September 2004, which hit Alabama and Florida, had 120 mile an hour winds, Category 3, a 16-foot storm surge. Remember, this is the one that people in New Orleans evacuated for, but then Ivan turned to the northeast, did not hit Louisiana, but hit Alabama and Florida instead. 25 deaths, 117 tornadoes, and $14 billion in damage. The next slide is going to show you beach homes at Orange Beach, Alabama, A before and B after Ivan made landfall. Quite astounding once again. You can see what storm surge and a powerful hurricane can do when it comes ashore. Now let's talk a little bit more about Katrina, which hit Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi. first made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane over extreme southern Florida on the 25th of August, rapidly intensified to a Category 5 storm in the Gulf of Mexico as it picked up heat energy from what's called the loop current. It's a subcurrent of the Gulf Stream that exists in the Gulf of Mexico. Made a second landfall on the 29th of August as a high-end Category 3 storm just to the east of New Orleans, Louisiana, with 127 mile-an-hour winds and a storm surge of 20 to 30 feet. Actually made a third landfall near another town in coastal Mississippi. It had a central pressure as low as 920 millibars, and New Orleans actually escaped the strongest part of the storm because it was on the left side of the eye, not the right side of the eye. The name Katrina has been retired from the list, and you might remember the video you watched at the beginning of the semester. This is a picture of Hurricane Katrina making landfall. That's figure 13.30 on the morning of Monday, August 29th, 2005, and then the floodwaters several days after the passage of Katrina because of those levee breaks that were thoroughly discussed in the video you watched, Katrina, Storm That Drowned a City, beginning of the semester. This is stepped art showing the potential track in white of Hurricane Katrina from the the National Hurricane Center forecast. The projected storm track of Katrina before she made landfall, and then you can see now superimposed the area where hurricane warnings were issued before she made landfall, 24 hours before landfall. Tropical storm warnings, meaning winds less than hurricane strength but tropical storm strength, and then hurricane watches, just in the event that Katrina would shift path. Now, look at the purple vector. That is a comparison of the actual track the storm took compared to the yellow dashed line, which was the projected storm track. You can see how good the science was with Katrina. It's just too bad that many people didn't have the means to evacuate when they were asked to. Some people chose not to, but other people simply didn't have the means to evacuate, as you saw in the video earlier in the semester, because there's an awful lot of poverty in New Orleans. So now let's talk about Sandy. Sandy is not in your textbook because it just happened in October of 2012. This was a hurricane that made landfall in the United States on the evening of Monday, October 29th, 2012. There were 147 deaths, including 72 in the United States. The remainder of the deaths were in the Caribbean. Sandy first made landfall over Jamaica as a Category 1 storm, and then a few days later as a Category 3 storm over eastern Cuba. And then as it marched northward along the east coast of the U.S., merged with a cold front and became post-tropical hours before making landfall, final landfall in northern New Jersey. Damage estimates are around $50 billion, and the name Sandy was retired from the list. This is a visible image of Sandy as she approached the east coast of the U.S. On Monday, October 29th. The photo credit goes to NOAA. The information on Sandy comes from the National Hurricane Center and NOAA. I won't click on this hyperlink, but it is a news article from NOAA declaring that the name Sandy has in fact been removed from the list of hurricane names for Western North America. Other notable devastating hurricanes. The September 1900 Galveston, Texas hurricane. 8,000 plus were dead in that one. August and October of 1893, there were major hurricanes that killed a lot of people on the coast of South Carolina and the Gulf Coast. The September 1938 New England hurricane, which is infamous. In Bangladesh, a cyclone hit there, killing 300,000 people in the mangrove swamps of Bangladesh. There were also cyclones that hit Bangladesh in 1991 and most recently in 2007. Tropical cyclone Nargis hit Myanmar, the country formerly known as Burma, in May of 2008, and I think killed about 100,000 people in that one. Hurricane Mitch in October 1998, which devastated the banana crop in Honduras and to a certain extent also in Costa Rica. Here's more on devastating hurricanes. Note the picture, figure 13.33. This is a photograph of the devastation from the Galveston September 1900 hurricane. And then this is a map showing on 13.35 tropical storm, cyclone, Nargis that hit in May of 2008. This is before it hit Myanmar, but you can see the path it took But even though it did not actually go onshore in Bangladesh, where it killed more people there than anywhere else, the storm surge from that tropical cyclone came ashore in Bangladesh, and there are lots of people that live at sea level in the mangrove swamps of southern Bangladesh adjacent to the Bay of Bengal. Now let's talk about hurricane watches, warnings, and advisories. The National Hurricane Center is in Miami, Florida. The Central Pacific Hurricane Center is actually in Honolulu. A hurricane watch is issued when a hurricane poses a direct threat to a land area within 36 hours of projected landfall. A hurricane warning is issued when it appears that a hurricane will strike an area within 24 hours of projected landfall. The warning comes with a probability, a percentage, of the center of the storm passing within 65 miles of particular communities. Now, hurricane warnings are issued for rather large lengths of coastal areas, and since a hurricane's damage is normally about a third of the warned area, the other places are obviously overwarned, which may lead to the sense of complacency among some people. But the National Hurricane, because its job is to protect lives and property, must err on the side of caution. Remember that people evacuated in 2004 in New Orleans for Ivan, but Ivan changed direction. And then in 2005, maybe people got too complacent when Katrina came along, said, it didn't hit it last time, so we're not going to move. And you know what happened because you saw the video. Information from satellites, from ocean buoys that float on the ocean surface, reconnaissance aircraft, and even ground-based radar when the storms get close, all fed into numerical models that predict into the future the movement and properties of the atmosphere. We're going to talk more about numerical weather prediction in chapter 14, but these kinds of forecasts are vital when it comes to letting people be warned appropriately about hurricanes coming their way. Ensemble forecasting is a new method that is used in which some of the initially observed conditions are tweaked, and then the model is repeatedly run to see where most of the solutions fall to figure out where the hurricane is most likely to go. We'll talk more about ensemble forecasting in chapter 14. It's interesting. In the 1960s, there was a project called Storm Fury where they actually dropped frozen carbon dioxide and silver iodide into hurricanes to try to modify them, maybe get them to change direction, or also cause them to have eyewall replacement so that would temporarily weaken the storm. Whether the hurricanes would have weakened on their own without this cloud seeding is debatable. There's also this idea of spreading an oily substance on the water surface in front of the hurricane, which would decrease evaporation, therefore allowing less latent heat to enter the storm. That's controversial, and that's something that really hasn't been tried. So modifying hurricanes is, just really kind of out there. Now let's talk about hurricanes in a warmer world, since there's a lot of discussion about global warming. It's known that all other things being equal, about a 0.6 of a degree Celsius increase in tropical sea surface temperatures will increase the maximum winds of a hurricane by about 5 miles an hour, which is pretty significant. Just before that extraordinary season of 2005 in the Atlantic, it was observed that sea surface temperatures in the tropical Atlantic were about 0.9 of a degree Celsius warmer than the 1901 to 1970 average. So that obviously adds a lot of energy to forming hurricanes. However, some climate models predict more hurricanes in a warming world, while others predict fewer storms as a result of the global climate change or warming. So there aren't any clear answers yet. Also, the difficulty that we have is that we only have reliable records of hurricanes dating back to the 1970s, and that's really not a very long time for comparison. The next slide does show an increase in Category 3 hurricanes or greater in recent years, if you look at the historical data that we do have. So there seems like there are more Category 3 or higher hurricanes, not necessarily more hurricanes. There you go. That ends Chapter 13C, PowerPoint, and we've completed all 3 PowerPoints about hurricanes.